Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every person's life when they look in the mirror and realize that where they are is not where they're meant to be. You see, life doesn't change just because we wish it to. It changes when we demand more of ourselves, when we refuse to settle for less than what we're truly capable of. Too many are walking through this world hoping for change, praying for breakthroughs, waiting for doors to open, but they're still living by the same low standards, the same habits, the same excuses. You were not created to live in defeat or mediocrity. Deep down you know that. There's a fire inside you, a whisper that says you're meant for more, and that whisper gets louder every time you take a stand and say enough is enough. When you raise your standards, when you stop accepting what's easy and start demanding what's right, that's when things begin to shift. That's when clarity comes, when strength rises, when life begins to respond to the new level you've chosen to operate on. So I'm here to tell you today, if you want real change, lasting change, don't start with the world. Start with you. Raise your standards, and your life will rise to meet them. There's a truth written into the fabric of this universe, one that echoes through every life that's ever risen from struggle to success, from defeat to victory. That truth is simple, yet it is powerful beyond measure. The quality of your life is not determined by your dreams alone, but by the standards you're willing to uphold. You see, dreams are easy to have. They float through the minds of millions every single day. But only those who raise the bar for themselves, only those who refuse to accept anything less than excellence, see those dreams come alive. When you raise your standards, you are making a declaration, not just to the world, but to your own soul. You're saying, I am not here to settle. I am not here to barely get by. I am not here to simply survive. You were made for more than that. There is a higher calling on your life. And that calling cannot be fulfilled with low standards, weak commitments, or half-hearted efforts. Look around at the lives that inspire you. Look at the ones who've turned pain into purpose, failure into fuel, setbacks into comebacks. They didn't do it by chance. They didn't do it by hoping someone else would fix things for them. No, they raised their standards. They looked at the life they were living and said, this is not enough. I will not live beneath what I'm capable of. They chose discipline over ease. They chose consistency over comfort. They chose growth over excuses. And in doing so, they changed everything. Raising the bar doesn't mean life gets easier. In fact, it often means the opposite. It means harder choices, longer nights, tougher battles. But it also means greater rewards, deeper fulfillment, and a life that speaks of purpose and power. Because when you demand more from yourself, life begins to respond. Opportunities show up. People notice. The world shifts to make room for the strength you've decided to carry. Many people wait for motivation to strike. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect conditions. But the truth is, motivation follows movement. Action breeds clarity. And the moment you decide to raise your standards, to stop tolerating things that drag you down, to stop making peace with mediocrity, something shifts inside. That shift creates momentum, and that momentum can take you further than you ever imagined. It starts with the small things. The way you talk to yourself when no one's listening. The habits you choose when no one's watching. The effort you give when there's no applause, no spotlight, no reward. Because those little choices, they build the foundation of your life. And when your standards are high, even in the shadows, your life begins to rise in the light. You were not meant to drift through life hoping for the current to carry you somewhere better. You were meant to steer, to stand, to declare what you will and will not accept. There's power in saying, I will no longer tolerate laziness in my life. I will no longer accept toxic people draining my spirit. I will no longer make excuses for staying where I do not belong. When you set a higher standard, you push back against the things that once held you down. You break chains. You silence lies. You build strength. Some people might not understand why you're changing. They'll say you've become too serious, too focused, too driven. But don't let their confusion become your cage. You are not here to please the crowd. You are here to fulfill your calling. And sometimes that means walking alone. Sometimes that means saying no when others say yes. Sometimes that means turning away from what's easy and stepping into what's necessary. It takes courage to raise the bar. It takes grit to say, I won't live like this anymore. But every time you make that choice, you are honoring the greatness inside you. You are waking up the strength that's been buried under fear and doubt. You are telling the world, I am ready, ready to live with purpose, ready to lead with passion, ready to rise with power. There is something sacred about a person who holds themselves to a higher standard. They become a light in the dark. They become a voice of hope. They become a living example of what is possible when you refuse to settle. And the beauty of it is, you don't have to be the smartest, the strongest, or the most talented. You just have to decide. Decide that today, you will live above the line. Decide that today, you will give your best. Decide that today, you will no longer let your past dictate your future. Your life can change. Your future can shine. But it won't happen by accident. It will happen when you say, I'm done with average. I'm done with excuses. I'm done with waiting. I am raising the bar. I am transforming my standards. And because of that, I will transform my life. There comes a time in every person's journey where the truth must be faced head on. Not just whispered in private, but declared in full. And that truth is this: your life today is not shaped by what you desire, but by what you've allowed. What you tolerate sets the tone for everything. You may want peace, but if you keep tolerating chaos, your life will reflect that chaos. You may want health, but if you keep tolerating neglect and laziness, your body will mirror that neglect. You may want love, joy, purpose, abundance, but if you continue to tolerate bitterness, confusion, excuses, and fear, then your life will settle at the level of what you allowed, not what you wish for. Wanting is easy. Everyone wants something. Everyone dreams, hopes, imagines a better life. But wanting doesn't move mountains. Tolerating does. Because what you tolerate becomes your reality. What you put up with, what you excuse, what you defend, even when you know it's wrong, that becomes the standard of your life. You were not created to live bound to limits that you've chosen to accept. You were made to walk in freedom. But that freedom requires a decision. A decision to stop accepting what pulls you down. A decision to stop letting fear, doubt, and other people's opinions shape your choices. If you keep tolerating being treated like you don't matter, then don't be surprised when people walk all over you. If you keep tolerating negativity in your thoughts and in your speech, then don't wonder why joy feels so far away. If you keep tolerating procrastination, then success will keep slipping through your fingers. You can't hope for one thing while allowing the very things that kill it to stay alive in your life. That's not how change happens. Change is born the moment you decide, I will no longer tolerate this. I will no longer accept what keeps me small, what drains my spirit, what clouds my mind, what weakens my will. This is where real transformation begins. Not in wishing, not in wanting, but in walking away from what no longer serves the purpose God placed inside you. And that walk may be lonely. That decision may shake your world. Because the moment you stop tolerating what's toxic, what's destructive, what's unworthy of who you are, everything begins to shift. Relationships change. Environments change. Your own reflection in the mirror begins to change. Why? Because your standards have changed. And once you raise them, the things that used to cling to you can no longer hold on. There is strength in saying, no more. No more of this pain that I've allowed to stay too long. No more of this fear I've fed with my silence. No more of these habits that sabotage my future. When you stop tolerating weakness, your strength rises. When you stop tolerating excuses, your power begins to build. When you stop tolerating the opinions of others ruling your identity, your confidence is born again. And that new strength leads you forward. Not in arrogance, not in pride, but in clarity. Clarity. that says I am worthy of better. I am called to more. I am not here to suffer under my own low expectations. People will ask why you're changing. They may say, you've become distant, cold, too strict. But what they don't understand is you've simply stopped tolerating things that were keeping you from who you were created to be. You've chosen peace over chaos, focus over distraction, discipline over indulgence. You've made a decision that your life will no longer be shaped by comfort, but by calling. And that calling requires courage. It requires faith. It requires you to leave behind what once felt normal and step into what now feels necessary. Every single breakthrough begins with a breaking point. A point where you say, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep living like this. Something has to change. And that something is you, not your circumstances, not the people around you, not the conditions of the world. You, your standards, your mindset, your boundaries, your voice. Because when you change what you tolerate, you change what you attract. When you no longer accept less, life begins to offer more. This is not about perfection. This is not about pretending to be strong all the time. This is about being honest enough to say, I've settled. I've allowed. I've made peace with things I should have faced. But now I choose to rise. I choose to confront. I choose to grow. Because I know I was made for something greater. And I will no longer be a prisoner to my own patterns. I will no longer be a slave to my old self. It may not happen overnight. You may fall. You may struggle. But every time you stand back up and say, I will not go back to that place. I will not lower my standards again. You grow stronger. That's how transformation happens. Not in one big leap, but in the quiet decisions. To no longer tolerate what steals your joy, your health, your purpose, your destiny. And slowly but surely, your life begins to reflect the strength of those choices. You begin to walk taller, speak with more clarity, love with more courage, live with more intention. And before long, the things you once thought were out of reach are now within your grasp. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because you became stronger. Not because your dreams changed, but because your standards did. And when your standards rise, everything around you rises to meet them. The people, the opportunities, the results, they all shift in response to your refusal to accept anything less than what you know. Deep down, you were born for. There's a quiet force within every man and woman that lies waiting, not in the applause of the crowd, or in the riches of the world, but in the choices made when no one else is watching. That force is the standard you set for your own life. And the difference between living an average life and rising to an exceptional one is found, not in talent alone, not in luck or timing, but in the power of personal standards. Your standards are the foundation upon which your future is built. They are the unseen rules that govern your words, your actions, your thoughts and your habits. They are what define the invisible line between what you'll accept and what you'll never allow again. You see, average is easy. The world will let you be average. It will applaud mediocrity. It will reward you just enough to keep you from reaching for more. But deep inside, you know you weren't meant to live in the middle. You weren't created for the sidelines. You weren't designed to coast through life, surviving one day to the next. There's something greater in you. A fire, a calling, a whisper that says there is more. And that more isn't found in shortcuts or cheap praise. It's found in raising your personal standard. It's found in choosing excellence when no one demands it. It's found in saying, I refuse to live beneath what I know I'm capable of. A person with low standards is like a ship with no anchor, tossed about by the winds of temptation, pulled by the tides of compromise. But one who sets a higher standard begins to live with a new kind of power, a quiet, unshakable power. Because when you raise your standards, you raise your life. When you demand more of yourself, not out of pride, but out of purpose, you begin to walk differently, talk differently, think differently. You don't cut corners. You don't make excuses. You don't settle for what the world says is good enough. Because you know deep down that good enough never brought greatness. Good enough never fulfilled the promise placed inside you. Think of the moments when you've been most proud. Not when life handed you something easily, but when you had to fight, to endure, to rise beyond what was expected. That's the fruit of higher standards. That's the reward of saying, I will not live by what others tolerate. I will live by what I believe is right, noble and true. Personal standards are not rules to restrict you. They are boundaries that protect the greatness within you. They shield you from distraction. They guard you from wasting time. They lift your mind above the noise. They keep you walking the narrow path even when the wide road looks easier. You cannot become exceptional while tolerating what is average. You cannot run with champions while thinking like a spectator. You cannot fulfill a great purpose with careless habits. It doesn't work that way. The ones who rise are not always the strongest, the loudest or the most gifted. They are the ones who quietly decide, I will not lower myself to fit in. I will not dilute my passion to be accepted. I will not let fear decide what I can or cannot become. And they live out that decision every single day. In how they speak to others. In how they show up when it's hard. In how they treat their bodies, their minds, their time and their calling. And let me tell you, the cost of raising your standard is real. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you popularity. It may even cost you some relationships. Because not everyone will understand. Some will say you've changed. Some will mock your discipline. Some will call your drive too much. But those voices will fade. And in their place will come a deeper reward. A reward that doesn't come from outside approval, but from inner peace. From knowing that you are walking in integrity. That you are rising to meet the level of the gift you've been given. That you are no longer bound by excuses, but driven by purpose. Your personal standard becomes your compass. It points you toward your higher self. It reminds you who you are when the world forgets. It tells you to get back up when you fall. It refuses to let you waste your days in distraction or bitterness. It tells you to forgive when it's easier to hate. To persevere when it's easier to quit. To believe when it's easier to doubt. It challenges you to see yourself not as you are, but as you could be. Not as others label you, but as you were designed to become. And the beauty of it all is this. When you raise your standard, you don't just lift yourself. You lift everyone around you. You become a light, a guide, a reminder of what's possible. You change the atmosphere of your home, your work, your community. Not because you preach, not because you boast, but because your life begins to speak louder than your words. People notice the excellence in your effort, the kindness in your character, the consistency in your choices, and in doing so they're inspired to raise their own standards, to dream higher, to love deeper, to live bolder. This journey from average to exceptional isn't about being better than anyone else. It's about being better than the version of you that used to settle. It's about honoring the gift of life by not squandering it. It's about showing up with full commitment, even when the world gives you every excuse to give up. It's about trading temporary comfort for lasting impact. And that kind of life isn't handed to you. It's built, decision by decision, day by day, moment by moment. When you live with high standards, you don't need everything to be perfect. You just need to be faithful. Faithful to your vision, faithful to your purpose, faithful to becoming the kind of person you were always meant to be. And in that faithfulness you will find strength you never knew you had, clarity that silences confusion, courage that overcomes fear, and a sense of fulfillment that no money or fame could ever give you. Because it's born, not from what the world sees, but from who you have chosen to become. So now the choice is yours. Will you stay where it's comfortable? Or will you rise to where you are called? Will you keep settling for average? Or will you dare to become exceptional? The life you long for begins the moment you decide to change your standards. Not tomorrow, not next year, right now. Raise the bar, walk with purpose, and never look back. Because when you live by higher standards, you don't just change your path, you change your legacy. And that, my friend, is the life you were created to live. Let it begin in you today.